for having me here. Thank you for showing up. It's wonderful to talk to an enthusiastic audience. And thanks to the Queens Civic Congress and Pat. I'd like to begin by telling you a little about myself. I'm a businessman, not a politician. Career, such as it is, began only 18 months ago. I was sitting on the sofa watching Mr. Wiener on television. This defense of certain positions made me think somebody has got to do something about this. This Congress, this government is out of control. My first reaction was to write a check to some politician who might fight the system. I said that to my wife, and she said, "Why don't you do something?" Well, one thing led to another, and here I am. I would like to consider myself a citizen candidate. I'm a little more in the tooth. In a new career, a career that I am not necessarily in love with, but I see a job that has to be done. We have a government that is out of control. You've probably heard that right now, the federal government, for every dollar it spends, it borrows 40 cents. This year, last year, and next year. There's no end in sight. We have recently come in Congress to a grand compromise. Instead of 40 cents on the dollar, we've cut it. 38 cents. Let's hear it. Well, being just a businessman, I can look forward and say, what does this mean? I've traveled all over this world. I've been in Russia when the ruble was worth nothing. Every retiree was out on the street. Saw a Navy captain selling his medals and pieces of his uniform for pennies so he could eat. Saw what happened in Argentina. That can't happen here. We won't let it, but it could. This is the most irresponsible, ridiculous government we've ever seen. I mean, lied too. Every problem we have, we will solve after the next election. Kicking the can down the road. How far can we kick it? Let's look ahead. In 7 or 8 years, our national debt, the way we're going, will have a debt service greater than defense and Social Security. President Obama, certainly not on the same page as me, has said our social networks, Social Security and Medicare, will be derailed in 7 years if we don't do something. What do we get? More political rhetoric. I believe that business practicality can be brought to these problems and it can be solved. We have to do something now. Sacrifices will be made, cuts will be made, but they can be prioritized. I can tell you, we can protect Social Security. People 55 and older can have exactly what they were promised. Beyond that, we're going to have to do something. And if you think not, you're not dealing with reality. We can protect Medicare without privatizing it. We have to act.
We do have the facility a little bit longer, so if the gentleman would like to stay around and talk to people, or maybe go a little bit longer on the question, answer, or statements, we might be able to do that.
Things are very tough in New York City. Everywhere I go, people tell me, whether it's at the supermarket, on the street, at a senior center, that all their expenses are going up. Everyone's expenses are going up, but their income is not. People are afraid. They're scared. They're scared of losing their Medicare. They're scared of losing Social Security. People come up to me and say, what is it that I hear? How can government officials cut Medicare and cut Social Security? How am I going to pay for my doctor if Medicare is cut? Well, I'm running for Congress to make sure that we preserve Medicare and Social Security. Good evening. I'd like to thank the Queens Civic Congress for hosting this forum tonight, and our panel of reporters from the Daily News, the Queens Tribune, and the Times. Conan, on the other hand, would like to change Social Security and Medicare, and has stated so on a number of occasions.
Liar!
You lie! My opponent, and I'll tell you why, that I propose to save Social Security and Medicare, while my opponent does not. My opponent refuses taxes on any corporations, closing any tax loopholes, and refuses to tax anyone, including millionaires and billionaires. Supporting Jewish organizations. My opponent's record in that regard, I think, goes back to his 18 months that he's been a candidate. We need responsible leadership. We need to bring both private and public sector leadership to Washington, and we have to solve our budget problems, but not on the backs of middle-class people, of homeowners, of small businesses, but we have to see that major corporations and millionaires and billionaires get to pay their fair share. Thank
Mr. Turner, you've spoken and written about the need to shrink the federal spending. I've seen figures 30 to 35%. And at the same time, you said you have opposed GOP plans to privatize Medicare and you would protect Social Security. I haven't seen any economists who say that all of that is possible simultaneously. So I was interested in what your plans are, specifically if you would be in the Republican, majority in the House, so you could actually have a chance of getting some things through. What is your recipe for being able to do this when nobody else seems to be able to put forth a plan simultaneously?
It is not only possible, it is absolutely necessary. As I mentioned before, we are now borrowing 38 cents on every dollar. I have proposed that we cut federal spending 35%. It's going to take us probably 7 to 10 years to achieve this. And it's done through cuts, capping the rate of growth, and ultimately what we need is what we have in New York City and New York State, a balanced budget amendment. Prioritize, and I've mentioned the social programs, the most important programs that have to be preserved. Beyond that, we are going to have to get out of some businesses. The Department of Agriculture, how we handle the Department of Education. Many of the expenses and responsibilities are going to have to be pushed back to the states, back to the communities, and back closer to the parents. We have EPA that is staggering in its complications to business. Every one of these is going to have to be cut. Now, I have proposed zero-based budgeting approach. And it's a business technique. You go look at responsibilities that government have, and you start with zero, and then you add in what has to be, and you eliminate everything that doesn't exist. Businesses have had to do this with entire companies, divisions. We can do it on the federal level. The redundancies, the waste, the insanity of Washington can be reined in. It's going to take some time, but it can be done, and it can be prioritized. Thank you.
questions from Weprin. What would be your plan? And you have the added difficulty that as a Democrat, you would not be in the majority in the House, and you would have to get some kind of support to be able to push any of your plans through. So if you could let us know.
Let me state at the outset, it is impossible to cut the federal budget 35% and not raise any taxes, even on corporations, without cutting Medicare and Social Security. Medicare and Social Security make up 40% of the national budget. It is an impossibility. To deal with our deficit, my opponent, who admires the leaders of the Tea Party movement, taxation on millionaires and billionaires, and corporate taxes and closing corporate loopholes. We have major companies in this country that have made hundreds of millions of dollars but paid no taxes at all. That is not acceptable. Corporations should pay their fair share. And yes, it is fair to ask millionaires and billionaires. I do not want to see the middle class taxed or small business taxed, but I would tax millionaires and billionaires. Thank you.
Switching gears a little bit. New York City and New York State just passed legalized gay marriage, and a lot of people are wondering if it's going to happen on the national level. So I was wondering, do you support gay marriage, and would you support it on a national level?
Our country's going backwards.
I did vote for gay marriage in the Assembly. I looked at it not as a religious issue, as a civil rights issue. We have plenty of issues in this country to worry about with the jobs and unemployment at record levels. And I think it should be a state-by-state determination as to same-sex marriage.
I agree with Mr. Weprin. This should not be an issue in this campaign. Sadly, for some it is. I've been asked for my position on DOMA, the defense of marriage. It probably will not come up. If it does, I will continue to support it. That's all there is to say.